Truth be told, it's been a little bit of a spicy day today, and not just because of the several things of Jack Daniels I drank last night. I've all but basically given up drinking. Like, as in, I don't drink to get drunk anymore. The last drink I actually had was back in New Year's, and I only had two. I had two back on New Year's. Anyway, I bought this because last night was a little bit of a special occasion, a sad special occasion. For just a moment, can we admire this bottle? This is an amazing bottle. Anyway, I digress. No, today is a little bit spicy because it is 3 years since Grizzly was baited. Now, if you're not a long-term follower of the channel, that won't make any sense to you at all. Grizzly was my dog before Fern. He was a boxer. He was 4 years old, and unfortunately, a farmer took it upon himself to do the wrong thing, and he put a toxic bait, a poison designed to pest control foxes and feral dogs and cats and things like that. And Grizzly took it, and it was one of the most horrific deaths I've ever seen in my life. I actually made a video yesterday about this because he got baited technically yesterday, but he died today. And I was really angry in that video. I was super freaking angry in that video. And I decided not to release it because I thought I could do better. I could do this justice. You see, Grizzly there meant the world to me. And I'm gonna be honest, I've never really got over his death. And a lot of people will say, oh, that's expected and all that sort of stuff. But I never experienced that before. I've lost pets, I've lost family members, I've lost all sorts of lives in my life. That one's the only one that's really hit me. And I just thought this is a perfect opportunity just to bring it up one more time. The anger that I had yesterday was placed firmly in one area, and that is that the use of 1080 poison, we're one of only 2 countries in the world that use it. It's banned in the US. Like, let that sink in. And I say odd as in it's odd that Australia allows it because we're far more of a nanny state when it comes to regulating things that are perceived to be dangerous. The thing that truly frustrates me about the use of 1080 is that not only I was a hunter for a lot of years, and I have killed a lot of animals, and part of being a hunter is that you have a moral and ethical duty to ensure that animal's life is taken as cleanly as possible, which means no undue suffering. In the best case scenario, the animal doesn't even know it's being hunted, and then it's lights out, and it never even knows that it died. So I say that to reiterate that I have seen a fair amount of death when it comes to animals, and I understand. I have seen animals suffer. I've seen animals suffer. I've found foxes before caught in traps, illegal traps that were put out in state forest. I've seen injured animals, very sick animals. I have unfortunately wounded a couple of animals before. And every time I've come across one of those situations, the suffering that the animal is going through is immense. And that's usually in combination with something that would be considered more humane than 1080. Now, I say all that because when Grizzly died, it was the most horrific thing I've ever seen in my life. Literally the worst experience I've ever had. Like, I was holding his convulsing body in the back seat of the car trying to get to the vets, which was literally 1 block from my house at the time. And I was covered in his blood and his diarrhea, and it was sprayed all over the seats and all over the doors and up the windows and all over the house. And that stuff is cytotoxic. So cytotoxic means that you ingest a toxin. So this happens with chemotherapy patients. You ingest a toxin, and then the fluids and the things that your body produces, like saliva, blood, vomit, poo, those things are just as toxic as the toxin that went into your body. And that means that I'm holding Grizzly covered in this toxin that can kill people. Now, having come from a background of hunting, I know how efficient hunting can be. The rules, laws, and regulations within Australia around hunting are very tight, and it doesn't make for efficient land management when you've got such tight regulations. Because, for argument's sake, a group of hunters that know what they're doing, they're proficient, like they're skilled, licensed, and experienced hunters, which there are plenty of in Australia, you give them access to properties and they will clear out every pest species on your land and the animal won't suffer. And that's so incredibly important. So it's economy, right? Because one bullet equals one animal. Whereas 1080, there's studies on it where they dropped 150 baits. I can't remember the national park. They dropped 150 baits in a national park, and all but one of them were taken by native animals. Now, there's arguments that, oh, native animals have a tolerance. Yeah, they have a tolerance to the natural version of 1080. It comes from the acacia plant. They have a natural tolerance to what's in that plant, absolutely. But this is a concentrated synthetic version thereof. They don't have a tolerance to that. There's very few studies on the efficacy of it, like how effective it actually is. Hopefully I've given you enough background data now, and I'm sure 95% of people have dropped off by this point. But I was angry yesterday because with all of that being said, with all of that information taken into account, and I've done my head in thinking about this, I cannot take Fern anywhere in Australia without running the risk of her eating a 1080 bait. And I literally mean anywhere. Almost every national park in Australia uses it to keep pest numbers down, and they use it because they don't allow hunting in national parks, and they don't usually, very rarely, they'll initiate a professional shooting program, but they don't have professional shooting programs from things like parks. Then, on top of that, most of our state parks and stuff are baited as well. And if they're not baited, a lot of them butt up against farmland. And as long as there are sheep on that farmland, they'll be using 1080. So, anywhere there's sheep in Australia, and there's a lot of sheep in Australia, we non-stop sheep farms everywhere. And it just means that anywhere there is sheep at this time of year, so lambing season's spring, at this time of year, there will be 1080 everywhere. I can't take her out anymore. The paranoia is just too much. It's insane to me that there are 100% clear better options and possibilities not only to control pests more efficiently, but to generate income and revenue for parks departments and conservation and all sorts of stuff. And we're not doing it. Instead, we're choosing the most horrific poison we can possibly get our hands on that's illegal everywhere else except for Australia and New Zealand. I don't want Grizzly to have died for no reason. I have to shoulder that burden and responsibility for the rest of my life. What ultimately I did to him. And I'm not gonna read the comments on this video anyway, but I know people coming, oh, it's not your fault, it's the farmer's fault, and blah, 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 blah. But it is my fault because it is my responsibility. It was my responsibility to ensure his safety. And I was ignorant then of the danger that was there because it wasn't signposted and I didn't know enough about it. I was ignorant to it. Now I am wise to it and I have a lot of knowledge because I've done the work. I've been advocating to try and get it banned and whatnot, but it's a multi-million-dollar industry that we're going up against. And through that product of knowledge and shedding my ignorance, there is now a problem. And that problem is that I know I can't take Fern anywhere without the risk being zero. All manner of protections I put in place for her and what most other people put in place for their dogs too, so they don't get hit by cars, so they're on a lead, so they don't run away, so you got good fences, so so on and so forth. I can't do that with 1080 because it's everywhere and no one signposts it, which is what you're legally meant to do, but it's a self-reporting system here in Australia. So I am incredibly frustrated, incredibly angry about it all these years later. Hopefully, it'll change if people talk about it and people get the message. Hopefully. I don't think it will in my lifetime, though.